Welcome to Let's Talk Education. I'm Randy Barber, the Chief Communications Officer for the Boulder Valley School District, and I'd like to welcome you to our show today. This is always a chance for you to hear directly from Boulder Valley School District's team on important topics in our schools. Earlier this week, BVSD finalized its plan for the beginning of the school year, announcing that classes will begin on Wednesday, August 26th in Phase 1. As you may know, in the 5-phase Back Together BVSD Reintroduction Plan, Phase 1 is home learning. We know that there are a lot of questions, so we decided that we'll skip the happy chat and get straight to our panel. First of all, go ahead and introduce everybody. Mark Crespo is our area superintendent who serves the southwest part of our school district. Good afternoon, Margaret. We got Rob Price, the assistant superintendent of operational services.
Good afternoon, Randy.
We've got Tammy Lawrence, director of student services.
Hello, everyone.
Katie Romero, assistant director of student services.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Renee Williams, our director of community schools.
Hi.
Additionally, I want to mention that two additional people will likely join our show a little bit later. BVSD Area Superintendent Sam Messier and Special Education Executive Director Dennis Rastatter. They're both in a principal meeting right now that Margaret joined us from, and we really appreciate that she did that for us. They'll be joining in to answer some of the specific questions that we have in their area a little bit later in the show. Before we dive right in, I'm going to just bring up a slide real quick here. And what I want to be able to show is kind of how we're going to be taking feedback throughout the show. We've already been looking at our Let's Talk Education tool. And so if you have any sort of questions that you want to provide, if you go to letstalk.bvsd.org or visit our Facebook or Twitter feeds, put a comment on the Let's Talk Education tweet or the Facebook post, and we'll make sure that we bring up a few of those questions today as well. Additionally, if you want to learn a little bit more about the Reintroduction Plan, there's a number of places that you can go to look for that. Our website is a great source. bvsd.org/reintroduction is the place to go for that. Additionally, inside of that website, we have a frequently asked questions section. We also are putting a whole bunch of resources in there, and we have links to things like Let's Talk and that kind of thing as well. Okay, I'm going to get out of this screen here real quick, stop sharing my screen, and we'll get to business. A lot of people in our community have indicated that while they're disappointed in the decision, since most of us do want to return to school, and that includes all of our educators and all of the administrators, they are appreciative of the move, including Jennifer Weber, who wrote, "Thanks for keeping our kids safe." Boulder Mama 5 said, "Thank you, BVSD. Our family thinks that this is the right decision," with a smiley face. Jody Britton wrote, thank you, BVSD, for considering all the factors, doing your best to accommodate everyone's concerns, and ultimately caring about the health and well-being of our children. But as I mentioned, I know a lot of folks do have a lot of questions. So we're going to first talk a little bit about what the plan is with Phase 1, and then we'll begin kind of diving into those questions that we have. As Superintendent Anderson discussed at Tuesday's board meeting, we have been monitoring 3 main sources of data. The student opt-outs, which are around 20%, the number of teacher exemptions, which is nearly 300 teachers, and COVID-19 health data, which has been relatively stable, but recent cases have been steadily trending upward, as explained on Tuesday during that meeting with Public Health. I'm going to bring in Rob Price here real quick, and I'm going to bring up a slide as well while we're talking, and just kind of have him explain, when we talk about Phase 1 and our decision to go there, again, it was multiple factors that brought us to that decision, but tell us a little bit about what Phase 1 does for us.
Yeah, Randy, I mean, Phase 1, and I just want to start off with talking about the 5 phases, right? Phase 1 was the most restrictive, where all learning occurs online. Phase 5 really is us being back to normal, where we want to be, right? So when we're thinking about home learning, what we're trying to do is not bring people together. I mean, that's been the easiest way to fight the virus. So that's the way we've been thinking about, and that's been guided by the data that Dr. Anderson's been following as he's been leading us through this process. So when we're thinking about Phase 1, right, that means our facilities are closed to in-person learning, but our facilities will still be open to our teachers. Our teachers are going to have the ability to go into our buildings and teach. And then what other services look like when we start thinking about food services, for example, will continue to run our emergency food distribution program. So we will be rolling that out in the next few weeks so the community knows what that will look like. And then also food for childcare, and I know Renee will talk a little bit about childcare a little bit later. But right now, learning occurs online, and then activities and athletics, we will continue to follow CHASA's lead on that. They've just rolled out some guidance this week, actually, on when athletics will take place. And then as we've been talking about, we'll be rolling out childcare sites at a number of schools throughout the district. But really this idea of we're trying to limit interaction between staff, students, just to help slow down the spread of the virus. So hopefully we can get back to phase 5 as quick as possible.
And as you look at this graphic, you'll see that it's 1+. And so both this phase that we're going to be entering the school year in, as well as the phase that we hope to get to, a little bit later, a month or two in, both have pluses on them. And when we're signifying that is a differentiation between the phase that we had originally set up. And when Rob talked about those 5 phases, the main consideration that was being thought of at that point was the health requirements that we were expecting from our health department at different phases. And so again, at the very beginning, we were really looking at that health data and making the decisions based on that. And so as we've been going through this, as you remember us communicating, we talked about that we were looking at the potential of phase 4 if restrictions were loosened up. But as we continued, a month later, I think that was in July that we talked about that. We still continue to see a rise in cases in Boulder County in this area, and so that wasn't possible. So we started talking about in our last meeting phase 3, and then as we were talking about with these different data that we were collecting, again we were heavily pushing, and we want to thank everyone that was participating and letting us know what their students were planning for this fall. That student opt-out number gave us an idea of how many people student-wise we're going to be in our buildings if we were to allow in-person learning. And I will mention that we had a little bit of, we knew that number was a little volatile because we were hearing from families that essentially, hey, we're going to go ahead and say that we're going to be in person or we're going to opt out, but we're really not sure about that. If it's safe 2 weeks in, we'd like to be there. Or conversely, if the data, is showing something bad, maybe we hear something from our neighbors about, the cases and those kind of things. Maybe there was a scare. We're not quite sure that, we wouldn't necessarily go straight to our, to online learning instead of coming into the school. And so that was definitely something that we were considering. And then again, the logistics of having enough teachers in order to be there and with exemptions that are protected by the state. The state allows under the current order for folks that have conditions that could put them at risk, or the family members have those conditions that they can be exempt from coming into in-person work. Those are the kinds of factors that then put us into this place. So kind of go to the next question here, Rob, after that long diatribe, my apologies. That the idea, Curious asks from Let's Talk, should we be planning on the entire school year operating with remote learning due to the logistics that we're facing? What are your thoughts in regards to that?
One of the easier ways to look at this is we got to be in alignment with public health. So we're going to continue to collaborate with public health and see where the numbers are, and that will guide us on what phase we're in. So, that's from the state, that's from Boulder County, that's from Broomfield, et cetera. But their recommendations will guide what phase we are in at what time of the year.
But again, as Anderson said, because of the current information for logistics, we don't see phase 3 happening immediately, and we're looking at phase 2 as being our next step. So we'll kind of move on to the next thing, which is, we understand that this decision is tremendously impactful on our families. And so I'm going to turn to Margaret to answer this next question from Mad Mom. Some of the names carry the feelings that they were feeling as they were going into our tool. As a single mom who must work full-time to support 2 kids, there is zero chance for my kids to be fully online in this fully online game. Crespo wrote, will you compensate parents for the time as full-time teachers? Additionally, will you compensate them for the additional things that they have to do in order to deal with their careers and dealing with their child's education? Margaret, we have a deep heart for our families. We knew that this decision was going to be hard. What do you want them to know?
So, Randy, thanks for that question, because I think first I'll start with I certainly understand and really very much empathize with many of the parents that are struggling. This was an incredibly hard decision to make sure that we were keeping our families safe overall and the health and security of our staff. And as an example, I try to bring in my own life when we're coming together to make these decisions. And I've often said before, I have a 10-year-old in my house right now, and that management was tough. And more recently, and on a personal note, have added a 4-year-old to the mix. So now having 2, it's very difficult, and I certainly understand. And with that in mind, I think one of the things that we've worked on as a staff when we collaborate and come together are ways that we can reach kids to the level that we can under the current situation, right? How do we provide those opportunities? How do we give expectations that align so that students are having a good balance of work and home, and parents aren't feeling that level of overwhelmness? And I'll move along a little bit to share. That's one of the reasons that we've really focused on the improvements over time around our online learning and our home learning expectation for our staff and for our families. We're working right now on a document to help families navigate. We have videos that are out there so that they're short snippets. You've got 1 minute to listen to a quick video. Here's the information that you need. And for our children as well, so that they are engaged in the learning. We're making those connections now so that families have those resources available as quickly as possible so they can reach out. And certainly we've got help desk numbers, and we've got people set up to provide that support just in time that may not be the teacher. So we also know that the teacher's working a heavy load, and we have district people that will be assigned for those support systems in place. And then I'll talk a little bit more in the future about what are those specifics around our enhancements.
And so actually, that's where I was going to go next. We have a couple questions from folks. Obviously they got a taste of home learning last spring, but that was in an environment in which our educators jumped in and within a week had to sort of stand up something that they weren't typically doing. Over the summer, I know that you guys have been working hard on that. You talked a little bit about that during the board meeting. Here's a couple questions that we got. Hopefully there will be a large, this is more of a statement, from KRBH. Sounds like a TV station. Hopefully there will be a huge jump in the equality of online instruction from what was offered in the spring. Angry student wrote, as a student in BVSD, I'm extremely frustrated. Don't get the social, emotional, and physical learning that we would get in person. No matter what BVSD says, online learning will never be close to the education that we get normally. They can't make it better, in quotes. I think we understand the frustration and the feeling that people have. Talk to us a little bit about the things that we are trying to improve here.
Absolutely, and we fully recognize that what we're trying to do in replacing is really a very tall order, and certainly we'll continue to love the feedback. So we always are checking the feedback to make sure that we're headed in the right direction, that we've met the needs of families to the level that we're capable of doing. So some of the enhancements, and I said this at the board meeting, super grateful for all of the people that supported us and helped over the summer, and parents who have provided feedback, and teachers, and even students definitely have impacted our conversations. They don't often share on email and things like that, but very grateful for any feedback that we get. We are enhancing our platforms, so I'll share PK3. We'll be using Seesaw, which is much more interactive. I would tell you that I've learned recently from a parent, quick shout out, make sure that your students are saving, and that's the first thing that you teach them, to save their work when they're in their PK3. And the teachers will be doing that as well, so it's a partnership. And then in grades 4 through 12, we'll be working with Schoology, and I shared that as well. One of the things that we heard very loudly, and rightfully so, when we transitioned so quickly, we were trying not to overwhelm families in the middle of a crisis and a pandemic, with people worried about their health and their wellness, and their students being stressed about not seeing their friends or their teachers and having that ending. So what we tried to do was build in support, and we'll talk a little bit about this through SEL in a bit, but we tried to build in support coming back that includes not only that community building and those relationship components, but also expectations around what our families can expect from our educators. We have incredible educators in BVSD, and we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to continue to shine as they always have. And some of those examples include specific times that they have to check in with their students. What does the schedule look like for the day? And I heard from a family member recently, what happens if I can't check on during that time? That's okay. We're setting it up so it's recording. It's synchronous and asynchronous so that parents can go back and check. We'll have little video snippets which we've shared in the board meetings before. we will have a schedule so that you know what to expect. And on our Monday launch day, we are sharing the launch for the rest of the week so that you know from week to week what you're working on, what your students are working on, and we're trying to come together knowing the pressures that are going on at home and understanding at the same time that in many cases our staff also have the same pressures that they're working through, and we will be here to continue to take that feedback, continue to improve our situation, and move forward so that it is better. I hope that it gets to the point of being equal or if not better, but at least we know that we've put in time and effort to consistently bring in grades, consistently bring lessons, and make sure that you can have the communication that you need from your teacher and your building.
Excellent. I know one of the areas that we were hearing a lot about was about consistency. And I'm not sure how they would pronounce this, but Renee wrote, what are the standards that we're going to set in ensuring that this happens, amount of online learning. They've seen other school districts that have set number of hours for online, that kind of thing. Hancock Homey wrote, I think that different schools handle different learning very differently. The BVSD, in the spring, I think they were kind of talking about there was a huge variance between what they were seeing in elementary schools, different elementary schools and what kids were getting online and the support that they were getting from teachers. They kind of mentioned that an example from the Bay Area where they're now kind of guaranteeing a certain amount of synchronous time. Nicola wrote, I would like to know about how many hours of instructional, not parent-guided content that will be weekday. I know that we're planning on having some scheduling that will be provided. Anything that you want to say in that regard?
Absolutely, and I would say that we are aligning with all of those similar school districts. There'll be a specific set of hours. Students will be in school from their beginning time till their end. We do have a variety because some schools go at certain times, and our recent conversation was trying to stay aligned to what families are familiar with and know as they're starting to build their schedules. So we will have schedules. They will have assigned time online that families will know about. They'll be posted. That information will be going out early next week. There will be expectations around contact time for students. Remember that we've got Monday launch day, so that's our non-contact. Students will have work, but teachers will be working on continuing to revise and move on in their planning. So there'll be additional office hours during the week. There'll be additional time for reaching out to specific small groups of students that may be struggling or may be needing enhancement. And then finally, I would say that one of the things that we're working very hard to do is make sure that that connection remains between our teachers and our students. We know that that's the best way, and that level of consistency and expectation will be through K-12. One of the benefits that we have is that with our strategic plan and our alignment of our unit plan development and our framework, that template is available, and we will be continuing to enhance and modify as we move forward through this year for what works best in that online environment. And that will kick off the year, and we are excited. I know these are trying times, but what an incredible opportunity for us to continue to enhance our opportunity with students to learn and academically achieve.
I know you already said this, Margaret, but I just want to make sure that we give a shout out to the folks that reached out, and that we acknowledge that we hear what they're saying. Colorado Dan kind of talks about the fact that he and his spouse both have to work, may not be able to supervise every minute of the day. Lanny, talks about the fact that I work, many parents do, having to micromanage kids while we're doing that is very difficult. Wants less synchronized learning. So I think you can kind of see, and I'll also mention Millie, synchronous learning needs to be optional on an elementary level, because of that same supervision question. So I think, something to kind of talk about is the idea that this is a difficult thing for us to tread, because we know that we've got folks in both camps where they can provide students that structure and want to have that kind of schedule and know exactly when the teacher's going to check in. And then we got the other side. And then we've also got, in a K-12, environment, PK-12 environment, we have the situation where we've got the very youngest learners, and we've got high schoolers that can be pretty independent. And I know we even got some questions in regards to, kindergarten, too much screen time. We understand, we know that that's an issue, and that we don't want them to be spending 4 days a week or 5 days a week, really, when you consider the entire week, sitting in front of a screen all day long, every day. On the flip side, with the high school student, and I know I got it somewhere in here, but is the idea that we have some high school students that, while I'm saying that they're independent, they're worried about the fact that maybe they're not the most structured individual, and that they might need that push from a teacher and need that structure. Boy, this is really, with a large organization and all these kind of factors, it makes it more difficult as we're kind of trying to figure this out for everybody.
Right, and I would just add that that's 50 plus buildings with all those classrooms, and actually, and this it's pretty incredible because that's welcome to a classroom, right? The reality for us is that as a teacher standing in front of a group of students, you do have an environment. This student needs structure, this student doesn't need structure, this child can be on their own, this child needs extra support, all those differentiations that we're seeing. And then we're adding the extra layer of having to really be aware of the fact that parents have to work and they need to be connected and they need to know where they're going and understanding. And we're really taking all of those things into consideration and just looking for the level of partnership. And we understand, which is why we've built systems that will allow for less screen time, still independent learning, structured learning if necessary. All of those are built into those expectations. And our teachers are incredible and they do it every day in a regular, typical situation, not in a pandemic. And we're really excited to have them, frankly, have the level of support from families that they can give in that learning environment, and that we will continue to take care of our students as we have before in BVSD, and we will continue to flourish. And together, it has to be together, so that feedback that comes in is key. If it's not working, reaching out to your teacher, reaching out to your principal, your counselor, the administration office, so that we can provide those same levels of support that we've done in person. And what an incredible, incredible moment in time that our parents can come alongside as much as possible to literally be in that learning experience with their students. And maybe I look at everything as a silver lining, but the reality, working 2 parents and 4 kids, all of those pieces come together, and I cherish the fact that I get to participate just a little bit, even though everybody's working and all those things are happening. A little bit more slowdown, and we hope that that partnership will continue and flourish, as I said before.
You know, I think that really brings up a good point, which is that as this has been worked out, you know, a lot of folks have mentioned that they haven't heard a lot from their schools, and it's partly because they were really waiting to see it. These educators were not, you know, sitting on their hands. You know, a lot of our teachers, a lot of our principals were thinking about all these kind of scenarios and how they would work it, but essentially actually knowing what phase they're in and what they're going to do. Now we will hear a lot more from them coming forward.
Absolutely, and we have worked so closely together with our principals, because one of the things that we heard, and actually you mentioned it, Randy, loud and clear from our community and family, was that one building was doing something one way and the other building was doing something another way, and the level of consistency really impacted not only them as parents, but their kids, because they could see how their friends were interacting differently. And when you're online in a virtual environment, that is simply just expanded, because kids are connecting much more than they would if they were in one school all day and their friend was in another school all day. So we heard that, and making sure that we were very honestly connected, integrated. Our principals have been incredible. They've been desperately waiting to communicate with their families, and we've continued to ask them to just hold off a little till we could figure out what phase we were in, and that it was clear and concise and easy for families. So thank you to all our principals for doing that.
And I was just mentioning, this week was their first week, you know, back actually in the saddle. Again, not that they weren't doing things before, but and we've had meeting after meeting where we've gotten them up to speed. And so now, you know, they're going to be out there doing that. I know you mentioned this, but I just want to, you know, kind of mention a few other things. We are planning on having 5-day-a-week learning. The first day is what we call a launch day for our students, learning launch. And then, so a few questions that have come out of that. Oh, and also the fact that we're planning on starting a little bit later than we had planned. So Bart Gertz writes, Dear BVSD, you know, let's get out of that discussion about the how and focus on the content, which I sort of appreciate, right? Like, we've been talking about the box, now we're talking about what's inside the box. We lost a week of education at spring break, now we're losing a week at fall semester. You know, Paul H. asked, you know, why does this date keep getting pushed back further? We've just pushed it back once for that 1 week, and I'm going to have you talk about what we're going to be doing during that week. You know, we are starting 10 days later, according to Helene, who was asking about that and how kids catch up. Why don't we have you first address that, and then we'll go into the 5-day week deal.
Sure. So really quickly, our spring break, as you mentioned, that was part of the wave through the extra week through CDE. We have lots of days that are built into calendars in case of emergencies and snow days and things like that. And then I would say that launching this week, the students, our goal is really to keep them in their coursework and connected. Starting this week later, our teachers will very much be in boots on the ground, engaging in that home learning that we've worked on all summer. Even though we've had so many teachers do this work, we want to make sure that every teacher is ready to launch in this home learning environment. And there'll be professional learning that's going on every single day. There'll be connections to what does that look like? How do I do it? How do I engage with this platform? So, and at the same time, there is plenty of time in the coverage for the week that we would be missing, especially because our students will have the opportunity to be so much more connected and engaged in their learning online.
Coletta Jewell wrote, or actually I'll start with Colleen Reed. I'm wondering why Mondays are still a planning day. When they were teaching in person, they didn't have a day dedicated to planning. Coletta Jewell was writing something similarly, saying now that we've got 100% online, I'm assuming that you're going to go back to full 5 days of instruction with teachers. There's a good thought behind this in terms of the fact that, we're still in a model that could flex later on. As I was mentioning when I was talking to Rob, part of this is about logistics. Our hope is that things do change and that we're able to go back to in-person learning. 2+ is something that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But the idea that if we go there, we need to have that day. Plus, our teachers are doing a lot in this model too, and we want to really make sure that they have a time to collaborate. And some of the things that they were working on videos and at the same time in an online environment, they were really being needed during a day. I might be talking too much here, but they were trying to kind of make sure that they were connected to students. So all the way from the beginning of their workday to the end, into the evening, they were connecting with families. And so it really changed the dynamic of what was normal for a teacher. Am I going down the right road here?
Absolutely. And I would say that in any of the phases, the restrictions, whether wholly online, where we're connected to students on a regular basis and really not having that opportunity to do the planning that's happening just in time, and then transitioning to another phase where the health restrictions are such that you cannot really interact with other people outside of your cohort or outside of your group, really limits that opportunity for collaboration and meetings and systems. We're very tight around the 4 times that a teacher can interact with groups of students and the 3 times that students can interact with with other students. So we want to make sure that we give teachers the time they need to plan in the best way possible. And by having students do their independent learning on that Monday, it gives the opportunity for the teacher to step back and be able to really focus on what the students are learning in, and how to plan ahead, looking at that assessment piece, all of those components moving forward. And I would say that happens in any phase, whether because of the health restrictions or the continuity online throughout a full 7.5-hour day in school.
Awesome. All right. And I know that you probably feel like you really pulled the short straw. We've got all these guests, and yet you're the one that gets to field a lot of these questions. And so I'm gonna throw a few more at you at high speed here. We're gonna call this the fire round. I'm a high school, a parent of a high school junior. Junior is stressful and vigorous here in high school. My student needs structure and well-organized learning environment. Actually, I might send this to one of our counseling friends. Tammy or Katie, do you want to field that? They're going to be people to help them, right?
Yeah, they're absolutely. Katie's ready to talk, so I'll let her.
Sorry. For you.
They are ready to meet with their students and work with their students. They know there's a lot of anticipation and anxiety around the junior year, the senior year. I mean, high school in general is very stressful for kids. The counselors are working together to share best practices. They're going to reach out personally by alphabet, by grade level, by group that they had last year. So let's say a student was in a support group of sorts with other students that have the same needs. So there's a variety of ways that the counselors are going to individually reach out and make sure that kids are ready for school, feel good about school, and have what they need to graduate, understand their schedule, understand their credits, and all the other things that are going to come down the pipe. But they are ready to go and support kids.
I know that I got to talk to some of the high school counselors, late in the year, in the spring, and they were talking about the big focus was obviously those kids that are going off, juniors, seniors that have to get to their post-secondary careers and make sure that they're getting everything aligned up there, graduating, all that fun stuff. And then, of course, kids that are needing that help. I know that, again, this is another example in which we had a lot of questions, a lot of people in this flux. We were looking at hybrid learning, wondering about their classes. When do counselors get back? Are they back pretty soon here?
They're back.
Okay, they're back. So is it okay to send them an email, I guess is the question. We don't want to overflow them right at the beginning, but.
I think that ship's passed. I think
okay.
already. So always feel free to email your counselors. They will get to you. I'm assuming that the majority of their inboxes are stacked. So be patient, but they will get to kids and parent concerns because they do realize that there's a lot of angst right now about what their schedule is going to look like, what school's going to look like, and how they're going to make sure they have everything they need. So we will get to them. But they are back and they are planning. We, in our department, Tammy and I and our other counterpart, Mike Lowe, are going to be meeting with the counselors next week, like I said, to share best practices and get everybody to a point where they're ready to roll out the supports that kids and families need.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we're gonna try to make this speedy here. So Korelic writes, and so this is back to Margaret here, I think, about upper level science classes. How are they being handled? Lab sections, biology, physics, especially chemistry. Misha Tia, who I believe is a student, asked, how are we going to do these science classes? Are we just, she's in a research class. Are we just going to pre-collect data and ditch the whole hands-on part? What does this look like, Margaret?
No, I would say that absolutely one of our great expectations is that we will be able to do those live labs throughout the school year. And one of the things that I wanted to share is that we actually have developed a resource guide, and that includes things like interactive labs. There are consortia that are meeting and building kind of Chrome-friendly synchronous and asynchronous labs so that students, whether they are able to do it in person or not, are still able to have the virtual experience, which actually many of the colleges are using as well. Flynn Scientific Live is another example, Bozeman Science. So there are quite a number of lab organizations that have started to develop virtual lab opportunities. And actually very often they are also used in colleges as well. So we're trying to align that experience so that no matter whether we're in person or online, they have that opportunity. And
Perfect.
that's actually K through 12.
Okay, thank you. SLF asked, will there be electives at the high school level? How soon will they know about school schedules?
So I can tell you that I don't know that I would have made it through high school without electives. So, I would share that yes, absolutely, our system is ready with electives to go, and that we should be sure about schedules coming up shortly. Very quickly, I'll explain that we are still working in cohort models, because if we go back to phase 3, the worst thing that could ever happen is that all of their schedules get redone and all of their teachers and all of their students, that level of lack of continuity would be really detrimental to all of our students. So that is a little bit of why there's a hang up. The opt-out conversation was really important to us, building those schedules so that our students have year-long comprehensive expectations and schedules that work for them.
I'm going to take a quick side note, which is I know that we've been looking at and waiting for some research from CU about aerosol. A lot of people have asked about choir and instrumental music. That's part of what we're looking at. I know, Rob, you guys have been looking at the filters in our schools and all that kind of stuff. Still something to be decided, and I believe that there's also a lot of thought in regards to how can we be innovative about this as well. Anything that you guys want to mention on that angle before I move on?
I would just add really quickly that Michelle DeBerry, who is one of our executive directors, has been working with both the health department and those individuals who work with aerosol, music, choir, things like that. And I would say that we're working very hard to come up with solutions. And then additionally, we should be launching or have launched an example of what we've done virtually around choir, where our students were able to sing during the spring and then pull that all together so that it was a large choir performance. And those are examples of things that we can do in the in-between while we're trying to figure out how to bring kids back for those opportunities.
Rob, anything from you before I move on?
Randy, I think a lot of conversation has been taking place when we get back to in-person. How can that happen safely, taking advantage of our outdoors, et cetera. So still a lot of conversation to be had around that.
I'm going to just send you a quick question about outdoor space. I don't think I'll be able to find the actual parent question right away, but I know we've gotten several. Are we looking at that as an opportunity so that we can get people back learning again?
Definitely, and we've got a full team right now working on that, looking at different spaces, not only on our school sites, but throughout the community that we can take advantage of. Like we talked about at the board meeting a little bit, looking at renting tents so we can spend more time outdoors even when it's a little warmer or when we have adverse weather. So yes, we're spending a significant time. Research shows it's safest to be outside, so let's take advantage of that.
As a health department, DVD, right?
You cut out just for a second.
I was going to say the Boulder County Public Health has been talking a lot about DVD, which is distance ventilation, and can't remember what the last one is. Stump the chump. Anyway, we'll find and post it. But anyway, let's keep up on this movement. Boulder Tech. When will information be shared about that? Do we know anything more on that at this point, Margaret?
Happens once a day, I stay So yes, Boulder Tech is ready to go. We are working on the schedules and what that will look like for our students to make sure that they still have every single opportunity to go through the Boulder Tech program. We know it's hugely successful and we want our students to be successful. So yes, more to come on that shortly.
All right, Scary Sherlock asked a question that I know that we got a lot, especially when we were talking about the hybrid, but now that we're in phase one, they still want to know. We started talking about middle school and trying to paint a picture of what that crazy schedule could look like. And we weren't really set on it, but they were asking about the idea, will middle schoolers still be doing 2 classes for 4 weeks? I don't understand how that will work.
So we actually are moving to a 3 class for the number of weeks with math and language arts support provided. So what we're trying to do is focus in those 3 blocks of time in their content, whatever that content might be, understanding that they still have the thread of the English and math throughout. We have a number of online resources that they could use both in person and at home that would allow them to have that continuity. One of our key, obviously, as we're doing research, we're recognizing that even colleges are moving away from having 16, 18 credits at a time and really having students take just those credits, 3 or 6 credits in a shorter block of time, because the level of intensity in an online situation changing so often really hasn't done well. So that's one of the reasons, especially those of you that know middle schoolers, we want to make sure that they're successful through this process, and structure is really pretty important.
I know that a big part of that hang up was the idea for like literacy or math that, okay, so we're only going to learn that for a couple of weeks and then not see it for the rest of the semester or whatever. That's not what the intent of that was at all, right?
No, not at all. Even during the 2-block period, we were still going to do the language arts and the math and the science. Our goal was to really kind of think of it as a magnifying glass. So you're magnifying those core content that would be 2 classes or 3 classes, and then minimizing a little bit around what those strands around those other content areas would be.
I realize that when I said aerosol, some people may not understand what I'm talking about here, but it kind of applies to this next one. Caitlin Hartman asked, are middle school sports happening, orchestra, etc.? So that I'll pose that to you again, Margaret, but just to kind of mention that part of the concern here is the idea that as you're playing sports, running, etc., that you're breathing harder and that more of that those little fine particles are coming out of your lungs and impacting other people. When you're playing an instrument, when you're singing, obviously at full lungs, that's going out. If you ever see any of those studies that are online with the video of people talking or whatever, it's amazing to see just how much stuff is coming out of your mouth. I'll bring back, sorry not to go into that too much, but middle school, anything that you can say in regards to that?
Yes, I would say that one of the benefits for us is we certainly are following the CHASA guidelines. We've been able to bring back a number of sports slowly, and we'll continue to do that. At this point, middle school is on hold. We are launching, I can remember golf right now. I don't know if Rob remembers some of the others. And we'll continue to look at that as we follow the contact tracing protocols. And I'll hand it over to Rob because I'm sure he remembers.
Other sports, softball, tennis, and then as most people know, football's been delayed. Girls basketball, etc. So, but Margaret named most of them, but we know for sure softball is going to continue and tennis is going to continue. So.
Thanks for the save there, Rob.
By the way, speaking of saves, my producer, Patricia Valderrama, did bring up distance, ventilation, duration. So I would have failed that quiz on Final Jeopardy. So we'll continue on now to another level, which is elementary. Similarly to the middle school question, elementary, middle, music, art, PE, people love their specials. What does that look like at an elementary level?
Absolutely. So we are planning on having electives, art, music, PE. It may look a little bit different with instrumental and choir, but we are figuring out ways to do it either virtually or in a way that's safe. And more to come on that. We're finalizing the schedule for making sure that every student will have the opportunity. I will take a second to just say it's very possible that instead of being what we're used to, art, music, PE in a week, it may be art for a while, music for a while, PE for a while. Really, it's about the rotation of staff, as well as making sure that we're keeping our cohorts aligned to according to the health department guidelines.
And I think that's important to mention because as we think about trying to get into back to a hybrid or an in-person, those cohorts and how many adults interact with each group is important, and we have some caps that we have to deal with in that regard. Again, something that we're really hoping to do at some point later this semester or year. Okay, so we did get some questions in regards to the computer side of things in elementary. Can we keep the same platform from elementary instead of Seesaw? They were kind of talking about the fact that that some of their teachers use Google platform or Google Classroom, sorry, and now Seesaw is being introduced, and so they're kind of concerned about how those things mesh up at different levels, and whatever you can tell me about that.
I can. So one of the things that we heard overwhelmingly from parents was the consistency in the platforms. One of their kids would have one thing and one kid would have another. So for us, we picked a platform that would be more interactive for K-3 and allowable for 4 through 12 as a larger chunk of platform being Schoology. The advantage is that Seesaw is much more interactive for younger learners, and that's what we want to do, is keep kids engaged. What I would also add is that many of our teachers will still use Google Classroom on the inside. So what you'll notice as a parent or as a student is that it's a kind of a single connection to Schoology or to Seesaw, and then the links will be connected to the Google Classroom work that the teacher has put in. The benefit of that is that it's a single place to go. You need your information for your feedback for your child or your communication or whatever that might look like. It's in Schoology or Seesaw, but you're not having to then navigate 3 or 4 other types of platforms to figure out where your students are. So on the forward-facing, out-facing for families, Seesaw or Schoology. On the inside, teachers have some flexibility around what they're using, linking to those platforms.
So that actually answers, and I have to just mention it because I love the name, Kiwi Sailor Sue. Asked that about, I guess their students were a little bit disappointed thinking that they'd have to use Schoology, but it sounds like they would have that opportunity to potentially have Google Classroom. They were wondering if Sandy was asking about whether or not some of the issues with Schoology have been fixed. Apparently, high school students said that it had been down a lot. I'm sure that our IT department's been working with them on that.
Yep, and I'll just add that the times that Schoology was down, it was actually down internationally. And it had more to do with the fact of the absolute bandwidth for the organization. The company is a third party, and the millions of students that were trying to sign on between 8 and 10, Monday through Friday. So they were able to fix that early on, and those started to get more and more limited as they figured out where their peak hours were. Although thank you to our IT department, because they've been incredible through this process as well.
I think this pandemic and the crazy way that it's kind of reformed things has really put a lot of people, a lot of companies, and on all of us a little bit in a different place. Somebody asked about Seesaw and whether or not it's possible. I think we issued Chromebooks to folks. They said that for the youngest students, pre-K up to maybe even first grade, that maybe tablets might work better. Is there some option to choose a computer, or is it all Chromebook? Do you know?
At this point right now, it's all Chromebook K-12. K-12 as we use our one-to-web and our labs that are existing, and we'll continue to review that as we move forward to make the best decision possible for our K-3 early learners.
You made it to the end of the fire round, so thank you so much. I wanted to kind of mention that we did hear from quite a few teachers and from community members that talked about how eager they were to get back to the classroom, and so I wanted to share a couple of those quotes. And you'll notice that I'm trying to make sure that we're really sharing their specific quotes so that people understand that when they put something into Let's Talk, we are reading those, that we're understanding them, and that we're taking those into consideration. CMS wrote, I am a teacher that's over 60. I am ready, willing, and able, and want to teach in person in my school. I just want to have it done safely. I want precautions, and we know that we're trying to put those precautions into place. But she so wants to have that in-person time with her students. She's going to be working online, and that she's looking forward to seeing them in that regard as well. Parent EJ said, will teachers be able to teach from their school classroom if they'd like to do so? Can they stand in front of their white wall or whatever in order to do that? Also, Jenny McGee had a similar question. I'm going to pose this to Rob Price. I'm a kindergarten teacher in BVSD. My own child started kindergarten. She wants to know if she can come and work from that classroom and do distance teaching from there. Teaching out of home was understandably tough as she was working with her own student and then having to teach. Rob, what can you tell us about what teachers can do there?
The simple answer to that is yes, Randy. We've got several health protocols we're going to be following. We sent those out to employees last night. But yes, our buildings are opened up to teachers, principals, admin staff, etc. So we'll just continue to watch those health protocols and make sure we're abiding by those. But otherwise, we're in good shape to start teaching.
And I know IT is not with them. We were asked, is it possible for them to stand in front of their classroom and use Zoom or something like that, which we have Google Meet, in order to broadcast out there what they're doing? I know that, Margaret, that's one of the things that we are trying to get some equipment for. We don't want to overuse that, though, because there's only a certain amount of that that's really effective, right?
Right, and we're launching our Riva system thanks to our IT department. Those deliveries are starting to come in, and we'll be.
What does Riva stand for those that don't know?
I may not be able to answer that question. Something about remote instruction, video, something or other.
It's a made-up word that IT came up with, so it's not
right. Yeah. And that information, that equipment's coming in right now. It's not usual that you stump me, so we're getting those set up now, prioritizing classrooms, and then as they continue to come in, we will continue to outfit the classrooms, because when we get back, we will still have students that want to be home, and we want them to have that same learning experience.
Similarly, Rob, to the last question, again, the health and the safety of our students and our families is what's really at the heart of a lot of the decision making that we were making. JSS asked the question: has it been considered? Is there a way for us to provide students, especially at the younger grades, an opportunity to meet teachers in person and to build that bond before going online? I know that that's something that we have been talking about. Again, there's health protocols. We have to make sure we follow those. Anything else that we can add there?
Randy, not at this time. And I think, again, we go back to the data, and when the data allows us to start meeting in person is when that will occur. But right now, we've instructed this to be 100% remote, and that's what we're going to continue until we know otherwise.
The part of the matter is that we really want to connect with kids, and whether that happens in person or online, that's important to us. And so that's why we did bring Katie and Tammy with us here today to kind of talk about, I know that we've got our counselors, as we were starting to talk about at the high school level. These folks are tremendously talented, and they're part of the system that we really want to have out there, talking to kids, bringing kids together in groups, trying to do that remotely for now as it's not safe. What would you like to say in regards to social interactions and how we're trying to accomplish that currently?
I think, in BVSD, we are extremely fortunate to have school counselors at all levels within our system. We have mental health advocates that are available. We've got tremendous partnerships with community organizations that we can, reach out to if we don't have all of the supports that we need within our system. And we are really working hard and diligently with all of our administrations, our teachers, and our parents that have reached out. Our counselors and mental health teams will be reaching out to the students that they were working with in the spring, and the parents that they were working with, and they will continue to provide the instruction, collaboration with teachers through instruction, small group instruction, one-on-one instruction if they need to. And I would just really encourage all families to reach out to their buildings if they are finding that they need additional supports. And our school counselors will help. And if they don't have the resources, they come to Mike, Katie, and I, and we can troubleshoot. And then if we don't, we go to Margaret, and she can help us get there. So we are extremely fortunate within BVSD to have the supports that we have, and we will do everything that we can to connect with all of our students and make sure that they have what they need to continue their learning.
By the way, Margaret did submit for her final Jeopardy answer, what is Remote Education Video Audio System, REVIS? So, okay. Thank you very much for that. KS asked, to get back to more of a serious note, I am extremely concerned for our students, not for COVID-19 itself, but for the stress and uncertainty and lack of personal interactions that those cause. I have a high school student who misses their science labs, band, art, PE, etc. But especially their teachers and peers face-to-face. This is at the heart of what we're thinking about right now. We too are concerned about this, right?
Yes, and I would say we've got some groups that have student groups that are led within themselves that have been continuing their group interaction, and they've been doing it all online. So we are going to continue to support them in those efforts and continue to encourage them to continue the groups that they have and do them remotely online until we can get back to a safe space and do that in person. And knowing that, in person is the most ideal, But while we are in this situation, at least being able to see people's faces and interaction through this platform at least helps with those connections that everyone is really craving at this time.
I know that a lot of kids over the summer have been connecting with friends in their neighborhood. Those kind of things, now that we're not in the stay-at-home order, that there's allowed to have those small groups, that's something that we definitely want to encourage kids to continue doing, right?
I would say for us, I mean, we are pulling together the advisory group to really talk about what is the best and safest way that we can do that small group interaction. So we are going to continue to advocate that we are fully remote and we're not meeting in person in those smaller groups, and that we as a team develop what does that look like for us to resume those small group interactions together. And Margaret, you might be able to add a little bit more to that that piece of it, but we really want to ensure that we are keeping everyone safe and that we have had some time to really think about what are all the things that we need to do to bring our students back in that small group environment safely.
Great. I think that this really sums up the feeling, especially for our kids that are at high school level. It is more than a bummer for high school students, high school kids. This is from KRBH, who said, especially for juniors and seniors, I have a junior who wants to go to top college and working towards that goal. They can't make up the lost time and all the things that they've had to sacrifice this far. Really kind of that heart for wanting to go back to hybrid, having that opportunity to do some of the things that they typically want. This is something that our high school counselors, Katie, are going to be working to support, knowing that these kids are dealing with a tremendous amount of loss and grief in their lives because of the things that they're not able to do right now. Homecoming, for instance, that's coming up.
Right, yeah, the social piece is the part that's hardest for us to deal with as well. I want to put out there that the counselors and the teachers want to see the kids. They want to be in the same room as the kids. They want to go to the dances. They want to have the football games. So we're all feeling the same way. And so we're going to try to do what we can at this point virtually to keep kids connected, to keep that socialization going, because it is such an essential part of their learning and growing. To the college piece, I want to reassure parents and students that colleges are in the same predicament. They're in the same boat we are, and they are aware of what we're trying to do to help students prepare for college. They will bridge that gap with us as partners to make sure that kids have what they need as they transition to college and prepare for college. They're hoping that they can be in person as well and not online. But for right now, they understand they're up against the same parameters we are. And so they don't want kids to panic or parents to panic that admissions or criteria for admissions is going to be the same, because it's not. They're going to have to look at the whole student. They're going to look beyond just the transcript, just the courses, and know that some of them would be in person with some accomplishments that might not happen right away. So I sit on a committee and I keep our counselors informed of what our higher ed partners are doing and what they expect from us. And I will make sure that we keep the kids and the parents informed, because it is important that we prepare them for what they want to do after high school, and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, I know, talking to the high school counselors, a lot of what they were doing last semester was really being that guide, because it wasn't just us trying to, essentially, knowing that we couldn't have a SAT test. Suddenly, colleges were also adjusting and trying to decide admission criterias and adjusting themselves. And so it was sort of like multiple factors were moving. And so people, concerned about those things that were pretty normal, they were having to say, listen, the college isn't looking for that anymore, and this is how we're going to meet their needs based on what we've heard. And that could change, just like all this educational stuff. They were changing from minute to minute.
Yes, and a quick update, legislation was passed over the summer that the Colorado schools, and I think it's a trend across the United States, but for certain our Colorado schools do not have to use entrance exams as part of the criteria for admissions. And so if we have students who are unable to, if the opportunity even arises that they can take the SAT or the ACT, We will keep them in the know if that opportunity arises. We're working really closely with College Board and CDE to try to make something happen. So we'll keep them in the loop. But as of right now, the higher ed partners and our schools in Colorado are saying, relax, don't worry about that. That's not going to be a piece of criteria that we will use. We will use other criteria in admissions.
I appreciate that. It's something that can be a weight off their backs as they're kind of thinking about all this stuff and trying to worry about all this that's in front of them. Another thing that I know that we've really been very cognizant of is the fact, in talking to our partners in government partners that deal with child protective services, for instance, that we know that kids, because they're not in the classroom, we're not seeing abuse. We're not seeing some of those things, and we're not able to protect them from those things. A couple questions that we got. Curious asked, what about kids that live in abusive homes and are going to school? Is their only way out? A sad senior asked about, just being completely upset and how are we protecting kids as well. I guess, again, that's just something that is at the core. Our counselors are very worried about that. I know our teachers are very worried about that as we're talking to these groups. This is something that we're talking about. How do we spot folks while we're in a virtual environment? It's not as easy.
I would say yes. We know we are working diligently in collaboration with our administrators, our teachers, our families. We have are fortunate again that we've got engagement specialists, attendance advocates, and our mental health advocates really do reach out and connect with families and work with our community organizations. And if there's any worry or concern, we are the first to report that to the people that can go and look for our students and investigate if there's a concern at all. So we are definitely working diligently with our partners on that and know that that is a concern. And I would say if you are listening and you need to reach out to us, and we will do what we can to help support anyone that needs support.
Abuse, obviously suicide, any sort of threatening behavior towards themselves or others. We definitely are here to help people. I want to make kind of a left-hand turn and talk a little bit about something that's really been growing organically. There's a big trend around learning pods out in our community right now. As people are looking for childcare solutions, ways to support their students, that this is kind of developing. Margaret, I know that you met with some of these groups to try to discuss how we might be able to partner. And I know that our focus is not just how we can support that like we do with every parent, but we really want to make sure that this is equitable as well. I know that's been kind of the big concern for a lot of folks is, that idea of how do we make sure that every student's served, especially since some of these things are kind of exclusive on a Facebook page or whatever. Any sort of thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, Randy, thank you for that. I would say that we certainly are working with our partners and families to make sure that our students' needs are being met, not only through our aftercare, SAC, school age care, so that those pods are available for families at low cost, but we also are working with local groups just to see what those pods look like, what do those learning circles look like, how do we provide the support, to your point, as we would to any group of students. We have a task force that's coming up that will also be talking about the enhancements around the phase 2, which is that 2+. And then the final piece around that I think is very important to know is that we also are reaching out to many of our Latino families. We work with our Latino Parent Council. We've had a number of conversations with them as well, because we do know that there are many families from in many different situations, and we want to make sure that we're meeting with all of those families and reaching out to them as well, so we know exactly how to support and how to partner.
I know one of the things that we're trying to do to help with the equity situation is provide folks that are working families an opportunity to have childcare during the day. And I know Renee Williams is joining us here. There were a lot of questions in regards to what that might look like. Let me get to the right page here. You want to just kind of give us a little overview first of what you guys are working on. Sorry.
Sure. No problem. So we, under community schools childcare programs, we have a lot of options for families. We have an infant and toddler center, which is called Early Connections over at Arapahoe Ridge. And we can support 20 infants and 20 toddlers in a very secure location within Arapahoe Ridge. We also have a CMS preschool childcare, and that's at 6 different sites throughout our school district. I have those sites listed, but they're also on our website. And then we have school age care, and that's our K-5 or K-8, depending on which building folks are in. And right now, we are planning to have all those sites running, at least 10 to 13 for school age care. All 6 of our preschool sites and our early connection site is up and running. Registration is open on our website. So it is, just so I make sure I'm saying right, childcare.bvsd.org. And any family can go on there right now and click on it and register. There's some things just folks want to know that I've come across, at least, is that we're all state licensed programs. We work daily with Boulder County Public Health and Colorado Department of Housing and Human Services. We are allowed in this particular phase, since there's no kids in the building, kids from other schools that are very close geographically can go together, but we are still maintaining cohorts, and we're required to do that. So that means that there's no drop-in care. But what it does mean is that, parents can be assured that there's a set number of kids in a group, and that it's stable and that it's safe. And that also when we transition back into a phase 3 or in-person learning in some fashion, that we can make sure that we can maintain those cohorts as well and align those to those AB schedules or whatever variety of possibilities we come up with as we reassess the situation. So that's a little bit of what we're doing.
Awesome. I'll just mention the schools that are currently open for registration: Meadowlark, K-8, Heatherwood Elementary, El Dorado, K-8, Community Montessori, Lafayette Elementary, Sanchez Elementary, Ryan Elementary, Coal Creek, Emerald, and Douglas Elementary. And so,
Yep.
And then there's also some SAC sites coming online: Eisenhower, Mesa, Netherland Elementary.
Yes. Oh, yes. And that's important. Thank you for bringing that up, Randy. Those 3 sites are right now, we're working on getting them licensed, but that shouldn't take very long, and we're in close contact with our licensing partners. So you'll see them on the website if you're a family and you're looking, but you just can't register until we get the license. So once we do, you're good to go. And then the preschool sites are Meadowlark, Heatherwood, El Dorado, Eisenhower, Netherland, and Community Montessori.
I know that people ask, in regards to the fact that, why are we able to go forward with childcare while, we're not able to have hybrid learning? As you hear from Renee, we have to follow a lot of the same strict health requirements, a little different kinds of staffing in terms of it's not our teachers, these are childcare workers, and so we'll have some questions in regards to that. But again, it's not exactly the same. It's not an apples to apples comparison. But what we do want to convey is that it is safe because again, we are taking those same health protocols very seriously, the distancing, making sure that kids are in cohorts, that kind of thing. Anything else that you want to say in that regard? I know that there's some state requirements that you guys are facing, not just the ones that we have for the schools.
For sure. And it's, so we have state licensing requirements. We have a 15-to-1 ratio for our school age care. For the babies, it's much lower, and the same for preschoolers. So there's at least 15 adults for every 1 child in the K-5, K-8 settings. We're required to do active screening as a child care provider. So parents can be assured that before any child or any employee is let into our buildings, that child care employees, that they have done active screening. We have a COVID coordinator assigned, and we work really closely with our health department internally in BVSD and Boulder County Public Health. If families were familiar at all with our emergency childcare, we developed a handbook that's kind of our operational go-to, and we've been updating that one, and we'll actually put it online so that we're fully transparent with everyone. And the goal is that every child care provider, every program, as long as you're a licensed child care provider in BVSD, that you will follow the guidance in this handbook.
Excellent. One of the things that we were super proud of in the spring was the fact that we stood up childcare for essential personnel. One of the questions that we got was along those lines. Now that we're kind of trying to help all of our families in terms of childcare during a school day, Nicole Cornelli asked, I'm curious if the district will continue to offer childcare to essential frontline workers this go around. She's a nurse, her husband's a firefighter. You don't have the option to work from home or opt out of professional obligations. They're also worried about, obviously, the budget aspect of things and all that kind of thing. Similarly, we've had some other folks that have asked about sort of those fringe timeframes that might be outside of a normal school day. Our focus is sort of turning to that, but what can you say in regards to that?
Sure. And I actually have a very good friend who's asked me the same question. Her husband's a firefighter. And so there's a couple things. We've made a commitment, and Dr. Anderson spoke very clearly about that during our board meeting, but we've made a commitment to ensure that families who need care receive it. And we're not going to put up barriers. So we will work with families on costs. They have to reach out to us. But we have a fantastic staff that will help any family in need. Regarding the essential workers, right now our registration is first come, first serve. I do anticipate we'll be okay. I anticipate that as we ramp up our employees and as we ramp up the sites, and we want to do it safely, we want to do it carefully, we want to do it in a way so that when school comes back, we're not interfering, we're not a hindrance, that we're in support. That being said, I am convinced that every family who needs that care will receive it. There are a couple things. I did see one of the questions was around, their schedule gets done at 6:30, but our site ends at 5:30. And this is a state licensing requirement that we have to hand your child off to a person on an emergency contact list. So I'm a mom too. There's been times when I tell my son or my daughter, just go head home, I'll be right home. But we are not allowed to do that for state licensing. So they could find a neighbor, a friend, and put that on put that person on as state as an emergency contact, and then we can release the child to that person for sure. And we cannot allow for drop-in at this moment in time. None of our child care programs, again, because of the cohorting and the staffing model. So we need to know from day to day that we have a stable group as much as possible. We have full and part-time options. At the board meeting, I don't think we had discussed that there were part-time options. So we have full-time, which is 4 or 5 days a week, 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week. So we have
that. Nicole, I'm not sure how to say her name, said, I listened to the meeting, 40 days. She's an RN, so again, that kind of specialized situation. She was worried because she just needs 2 days of childcare. It sounds like that we can take care of that.
She's got it. And the prices, we updated our prices. They're on the website. And she could look at those prices, find something that works for her and her family at a site that's close to where she lives, and then go ahead and register.
Let's see here. Whether or not there will be another part-time question. Sorry, just trying to catch up here. They were wondering also about, what happens to schools that use YMCA instead of the normal SAC. Well, this is something that I know that we're continuing to work out, correct?
Yeah. So we do. There's a certain number of schools. Most of them are in BVS or in Boulder proper that are under a contract with the YMCA. And we are working really closely with the Y to have an addendum to our agreement so that they are following the same protocols that our internal child care programs are following. And the reason being that we all have to stay in alignment, right? Like this is such a complex, continually moving system. Is the pandemic. And the more that we can stay aligned and have the same screening protocol for staff, the more that we can have the same COVID coordinator type protocols for staff, the more that we are aligned in terms of schedules, when we do go back to in-person learning. So those are things that we are confident we'll be able to work out, and we're just working through the details right now. But and I think another thing that's important is that regardless of who provides the childcare, it's all the same rate. So those rates that are published and that Dr. Anderson spoke about at the board meeting, those are the rates for families. We take CCAP, which is for students whose families qualify for free and reduced lunch. And we've made a commitment to work with any family in need. So it won't be a barrier.
Perfect. I know that during the meeting you did mention that it's sort of tiered based on age of student. And also if you're a free and reduced lunch, then it would be free. Additionally, if there's some sort of need that's outside of that we are entertaining applications around that as well.
Yeah. And just related to that, so babies are expensive. All kids are expensive, right? But babies are really expensive. So that's why when you look at those costs, the tinier the human, the more expensive the cost. And that's because our ratios are really small, are really low as the age gets lower, you know. And then also a family, and this is complicated, but not too complicated. If a family qualifies for free and reduced lunch, they fill out a free and reduced lunch application. They also, for childcare, we're two separate programs. We work together, but we're two separate programs. Then they also have to apply for something called CCAP. And again, all of that information is right on our website. If you live in Broomfield County, you have to apply for CCAP in Broomfield County. If you live in Boulder County, you have to apply for CCAP in Boulder County. All of it's on our website.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. I know one of the things that Dr. Anderson talked about during the board meeting is that what we are hoping for a little bit is the idea that we are going to have remote learning. So these kids are coming to our building and we'll have a safe and a warm place with Wi-Fi in order to do these things. Just give us a little taste of what you think it will be like.
Sure. So, and you know, we're basing it off of the emergency childcare model that we did in the spring. So we're, again, by licensing, we're required to have ample outdoor time. Kids are required to have quiet time, snack, lunch, all that good stuff. Ample socialization, but also a space. You know, we had these center programs, and we got all these dots too, like so that we can socially distance kids. And, you know, if you've ever worked in an elementary school, and I did, you put dots around so that kids know that's your space. So we have those ordered and ready to go. And then we have banks of computers, and where ideally a family can bring their own device, and they're school issued devices. So if you don't have one, we will get you one. Don't think you need to purchase one. But that there's a station where kids can log in and with the support of one of our childcare professionals and log into some of their online learning. That being said, childcare professionals are not teachers. So they're great, they're well trained, they love kids, and they will support, but they will not be providing the math instruction or the reading instruction. That's the teacher's job.
And I think that's a question before, who asked, you know, childcare is a great option for many families, and in the past, it hasn't always been viable for all of our children, especially those with special needs and behavior needs. I know Dennis Rastatter is on the call with us. You know, she was sort of asking, is there a way for our special education paras to be used in a capacity to support this? I know that there's a lot of things that we're thinking about, you know, in terms of how we might support in person as we go to 2+. Anything that you want to add in that regard?
Well, I would just say yes, that Renee and I are working together to explore options for all kids to be able to attend a child care opportunity. So yes, there is a possibility that, you know, we'll be able to provide some type of instructional supports to students while they're in their child care setting.
But at this point, right now, as Renee said, the child care workers themselves are not educators, and so we want to be kind of careful to be really clear about what our expectations are at this point.
Yes, that's correct.
I know, Dennis, well, we've got you here. We have gotten a number of questions in regards to, you know, what this will mean for students with special needs, and also students, and I'll widen this out, you know, in regards to that some students just have a hard time, you know, being on the computer, right? But let's start with the special education side of things. Tara HG asked, how will IEP, SPED student services be provided? We know that these students have had a difficult time with remote learning.
Yeah, so they have, that's right. I would say that all of the enhancements that Margaret's talked about to the general ed programming that Katie and Tammy have talked about around the social emotional supports will absolutely benefit our students with special needs. Remember, they're general education students first, right? And so our ultimate goal is to have them access those general ed learning environments. With that said, we've also done similar improvements to our special education programming. So kids who receive specialized instruction through special education should notice an improved presentation of materials we provide or are preparing tutorials for parents around executive functioning, how to set up a successful workspace for your child, how to access online learning for the direct instruction we're providing through Wilson Intervention Services for kids who have some reading difficulties, for also for unique learning systems for our kids with more intensive needs. We're working to provide additional guidance and support to all of the staff that implement those curriculums to students. Obviously, those companies that we work with also are improving their online presentations as well. So we anticipate a much improved process for all students. The uniqueness about special education that it's individualized, right? And so every kid's needs are a little bit different. And so you will hear, we're going to require that all families will hear from their special education case manager before school starts on Wednesday, August 26th. So to allow for those opportunities and times to really brainstorm specific student situations. So that's how we're confident that special ed services will be much improved for our students.
Yeah, I think when you think about, we were talking about schools, and that in their worlds, we're going to have like a big guidelines that will sort of structure how things will be going at the big level, but each school will be a little bit different. You're going to expect that communication. So in special education, that will be the case. Anything else that you want to mention? I know again, this is definitely a moment in time that these parents
absolutely. Our hearts are with you. We know these are difficult times. Our staff wants your kids back. We all want your kids back to work with. And so we'll be continuing to brainstorm, to think outside the box, whatever 2+ looks like. We'll be trying to work to support the students with special needs in 2+, in that in-person learning to the maximum extent possible. We're with you. Please stick with us. We are here to support you and your children through these most difficult times.
I will just sort of expand back to the general education population. We have heard from families that are like, I just can't, right? Like, my student just did not do well from the computer. Margaret or anyone, what is there for them? I know that we're going to be working on an individual. Our hope always is to individualize the students. What can we tell them?
So I would definitely say that our enhanced opportunities coming forward in the fall will assist with that. And if you still find that your student is struggling in a structure situation, I have a 10-year-old that does, then how do we build those capacities? Reaching out to counselors again and your teacher and letting your principal know, and finding other ways, as we would in a traditional classroom setting, to meet the needs of the students. We will work together to make sure that your students and that we are working together for them to be successful. So don't hesitate to reach out as we get started on this. And at the same time, if your student doesn't do well with structure, needs a little more flexibility, reach out again and make sure that we're working together. Because this is new for all of us. And I think that we've done an incredible job of getting ready and reinventing education in the 21st century. And I keep saying that that's where we're headed finally. And we have to be ready for what that transition looks like, and just sit with us, because we will make it and we will persevere for sure.
We're going to talk about some resources for families, very similar to what we talked about last spring. But before I do that, I don't know if Rob or Margaret, if either of you would be willing to talk about, we are looking, again, as everybody's mentioned, about 2+. And so there's a working committee that has been put together. They're planning on starting to work next week. I know it doesn't appear that Sam was able to join us, which is okay. What's going on there? And I know that they're doing some iterative design work to try to figure out and propose some recommendations to the Board of Education.
I'll jump in, Rob. So Dr. Messier is responsible for the task force. There are about 30 people on the committee. There have been applications from staff. We're working very closely with our association to make sure that we're well represented throughout the district. And part of the process will be to bring in expert consultants as well, both internally and externally, so that we can determine what are the best systems to bring students in a safe and appropriate manner related to what the health department guidelines are, giving our students the best opportunity to come in with smaller groups, group instruction. We know that our K-3, it's really hard for kinder, to be online trying to learn how to read. How do we get access for those students as often as possible So those are some of the considerations that we'll be looking at so that we can more broadly expand our opportunities for students in that prioritized model.
I know that the expectation is for them to come back on September 22nd and present to the board their recommendations. One of the questions, and before I say that, one of the things that we really have talked about is that as their charge, as they've gone out, as they start to meet, and again, it's a small team because we really want it to be nimble and moving. It doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from other folks. If you've got a great idea, Let's Talk is a great place for that. We'll be putting up an ideation board. But in addition to that, this group will be taking feedback through surveys and other means. So I just want to put that out there. I know we've gotten some feedback from folks of, we want to be part of that. We were worried that if this thing was, 500 people big, that it may never be able to get to a decision. So we wanted it to be nimble. But that being said, the big 4 priorities that we set at the beginning, health, educational quality, all those things still are at the forefront of what we're asking them to look at. Additionally, we're looking at that equity piece, working families, certainly students that need extra support, and also the idea of younger children, knowing that foundation is so important. One of the questions that came in, one of my last questions, is the idea of the longer time frame. So we're talking about at least until September 22nd, in which a recommendation comes. That really means that it would be a couple weeks after that before the likelihood of something being stood up is. So we're looking into October before anything changes. Some people, this person, Kate Senecal, asked, why not give a longer time frame so that parents can plan? I know that on the flip side, we've had some folks that have asked, why not just allow us to go week by week and then decide if tomorrow we're okay with a hybrid model. Rob Price, anything that you want to say in regards to, we had to kind of find an in-between spot so that our teachers and our staff could plan for it, right?
You're right, Randy, and I think, again, it's going to take a little bit of time to work through this committee. We wanted to make sure we allowed enough time for that to happen, and then some flexibility at the end to be able to move into another phase. I mean, there's a lot that has to happen from an operations perspective to make that happen. We want our families to have time to be able to transition from phase to phase. And then again, it goes back to some of the data that we've been talking about that Dr. Anderson has referred to a number of times, but making sure we're following that and the metrics are there to allow us to go back into in-person. So there's just a lot that has to happen in a short amount of time, it seems, but there's not a person in this district that doesn't want all of our students back in our buildings. And that should be known. So we are going to do everything we can, and that's why we're standing up this committee to see what else we can be doing to get people back into the buildings.
That idea too, we want to be careful to bridge that gap between not waiting so long. If a great idea comes up and we're able to implement it, we may see things come sooner. But that idea that we also, we understand and feel a heart for parents and for our staff members that are trying to make plans for childcare and all these kind of things. So please know that our heart is there and we understand the great flux that this is and the struggle that this is. I'm going to go ahead and present my screen one more time, and then just to prepare everybody, this is the final round. After this, I'd love to have everybody just, if I miss something, if you want to make sure that something gets across, this will be your opportunity. But before I do that, I just want to mention a couple quick resources. We have a family helpline that is just a great starting spot. If you don't know where to start, 720-770-0102. And it's also in this graphic because this is really the way that we want people to think about. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about, as you go through this, we don't want people to be quiet. If you're having trouble, if you're not quite sure how to navigate something, your student's having issues, they need support, any of these kind of things, we are here to support you. Questions about academics, we typically want that to start at the school level. So again, as we were talking about, now that our counselors are back, our teachers are getting back next week, those are opportunities as the schedule comes out and as the school is putting out more of that information for you to connect with them if you have questions. We don't want you to overwhelm them, but again, as they said, they're already getting a lot of those kind of questions already, so don't be too afraid now. If you need further help and you're not getting help from your teacher once the term starts, then you can always reach out to your principal. Our IT department has been outstanding through this whole thing. They have something called IT Prime, so if you have a computer that's not working, if you're having trouble accessing Infinite Campus or any of our systems, 720-561-HELP or IT@bvsd.edu. org is a great place to go. These guys are amazing. As we were doing all of our opt-out things, they were really working with folks over the weekend to make sure that they were taken care of. The IT service desk is outstanding. As we were talking about, our counselors are there, and we really want, if a student is struggling emotionally, socially, they're there to support. Reach out to your school counselor. That's what they're there for. They want to help kids. We also want to mention that if you have a student that is in crisis, especially if there's a life and death situation, call 911 immediately. There's also crisis services, which is 1-844-493-TALK. This is a statewide service. They will talk to you about, this is for adults, it's for students, it's for anyone, 24/7 in regards to things. If you just need to talk to somebody, talk about a struggle that you're having, these folks are there for you. And we have other services that your counselor can connect you to as well. Our health folks are available. This COVID situation is a difficult one. As your kids are thinking about going into the child care system, or as we get closer to a possible phase 2+, if you've got questions about COVID, or you've got a student that has specific health needs that they're trying to deal with at home, our health services team is there to support you. Contact your school nurse or health services at 720-561-5544. Again, if anything else comes up, that family helpline is your go-to. You can leave a message in either English or Spanish, and they will get back to you promptly, and we'll get you connected to the right services. And so, as promised, I'm going to stop sharing here and just go around the team. I'll start with Rob Price. If you have anything that you want to add that I missed, that you want to make sure to get across to people, this is your moment.
Renee, I'll just say what I just said. I mean, we want students back in. This is an extremely, extremely complicated decision. We will bring students back when it's safe for not only students, but also our staff. So that's what we're working on. And our county health departments have been phenomenal to work with through this. But the data tells us right now that it's not. So we'll continue to work on it. We'll continue to communicate, and we'll talk about next steps here the end of September.
Margaret.
Hi, thanks, Randy. I want to just say, one, we are so incredibly grateful for our parents and community, our staff, everyone coming together. It has been an incredible opportunity to watch our students flourish in the way they have, even in these difficult times. And I would say, stay with us. We are making changes on a regular basis. The BVSD team is so committed to our kids every single day, tireless hours, and so appreciate our parents' grace and appreciation and feedback, and just keep it coming.
Awesome, thank you. Katie Romero.
Thanks, Randy. I just want to let everyone know that we stand ready to support our kids with whatever they need, the academic, the social, emotional, and all of the above. So be patient with us, but we are here for you and your students, and we want to see them successful just as much as you do, and so we're in it together.
Awesome, thank you. Tammy.
And I would just say, if you've got questions, you need support, reach out. We will do anything that we can to get you the resources that you need and provide that support. So yes, we're here for you, and we want your students to be successful.
Awesome. Renee?
Yes. So one, that we have an email address, bvsd.childcare@bvsd.org. Please email us. That's the quickest and easiest way for us to get answers to your questions. If you have a question, please look at our website. Under each program, there are some, frequently asked questions that we get a lot that we've tried to answer. We are just about there with every document translated into Spanish. We have a Spanish translator and specialist on Spanish-speaking translator and specialist on staff. So bilingual, can do everything written, verbal communication with families, and a liaison to all of our sites. So please reach out and we'll connect you. Her name's Val. Fantastic. And we are here. We are here to support you, to make sure that your kids have a safe and warm and welcoming place while you go to work. We are partnering every step of the way with your school and your school's principal, so that we're in alignment, and we're making sure that we're a help and not a hindrance. And we're here for you. Reach out.
I'm going to share my screen. At the board meeting, we did make this mention. You guys are currently hiring childcare staff as well. So there's a place on our homepage if you are interested in that. Anything else that people need to know about that, Renee?
No, that's right on the jobs website on for BVSD. So you do need certain number of hours and licensing requirements, but that's our job to get that for you. So yeah, you have to like kids and you have to be good with kids. That's the first and foremost. But then we will help you get the licensing requirements that you need so that you can be employed. And if you're in BVSD too, and it's something that you're considering, that we are more than happy to take other BVSD employees. And as situations change, we're committed to taking care of our people.
I think if we could, you gotta love kids. BVSD. That's definitely.
You have to love kids. Yeah, and you have to be okay with boogers.
Well, that's a good no, I don't know if that's a good transition or not, but requirement in the special education department. Dennis, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I would just add again to repeat that to our families of kids with disabilities. I know this is a difficult time. I understand the importance of in-person learning for your child. I would say every one of these folks on this presentation today understand the importance of and the differentiated needs of our kids with disabilities. Every one of these people and countless hundreds of others are doing tireless work to help continue to improve our supports and services for kids with disabilities. So please know we're here for you. Reach out to us. Your kid's teacher and your special ed teachers and providers and paraprofessionals know your kids better than anyone else in this entire district because of the amount of time they spend with them, the amount of data we collect, good, bad, or indifferent, the amount of data we have. So work with building teams. Anytime you have a question, anytime you have a concern, we will problem solve things with you and for you to the benefit of your child, okay? So again, just to reiterate, hang with us. We're on your side. We're going to do everything we can to support your children.
I think that's an excellent statement that really applies to everyone here. We understand that this is a difficult moment and people are really struggling with what to do that's best for their students. Hang with BVSD. We care deeply about the students and we really want to make sure that all this works and that we provide the highest quality education in this very, very difficult time. And we really want to make sure that we're working with folks. We didn't get to a few of the enrollment questions that we have, but we hope that you'll consider, staying with that homeschool that you know and love, because those teachers are really dedicated to your kids. One last thing that I'll mention before saying goodbye is that we will be taking the information that all these wonderful panelists, and I just want to thank all of them for their time this afternoon, were able to provide, and we'll be putting that into our FAQ section on our Reintroduction page, which again is bvsd.org/reintroduction. And thank you all for the time that you took this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And again, hopefully soon we'll be all together, BVSD. Have a great afternoon. Thanks.